Hi, this video is a review of a book named The Birth of Tragedy by Friedrich Nietzsche. And in this channel, I'm going to explain you the work of Friedrich Nietzsche in very details. So if you are interested in reading and understanding his complex work, then you can subscribe to my channel. So first of all, I'll let you know why I chose this book for reading and review. So basically, I am very much inspired by the work of Friedrich Nietzsche, and I'm very curious about about his initial thought processes, like how he formulated such good work in his life. So I was always very much interested in reading his all books. So therefore, I have decided to initiate that thing from his very first book, that is named as The Birth of Tragedy, because I wanted to know the reason or the cause behind his philosophical journey. So first of all, we have to understand the history and the context about this book. The Birth of Tragedy is Friedrich Nietzsche's first book, published in 1872, when Friedrich Nietzsche was of the age of only 28. He was the professor of classical philology of Greek literature at the University of Basel in Germany. In 1886, there were some little modification about the title, and some passages were also added by Friedrich Nietzsche in this book. So let's begin the review of this book. So first, I'll start from the introduction. So we have to understand, like, what was Nietzsche's main thought about writing this book. So firstly, we have to understand what is the Greek tragedy. The Greek tragedy was a very popular and most influential form of drama in ancient Greece, especially in Athens, where Nietzsche depicted the tragedy was a form of interplay between two Greek gods such as Apollo, the god of sun, and Dionysus, the god of wine. The tragedy started in late 6th century BCE and ended in 406 BCE. So we have to understand, like, how was the Greek tragedy performed in Greek theatres. The basic structure of Greek tragedy is fairly simple. After a prologue spoken by one or more characters, the chorus enters, singing, dancing scenes, and then alternate between spoken sections, dialogue between each characters and actors. The Birth of Tragedy is a Nietzsche's account on the history of Greek tragedy and of its eventual suicide by the hands of Greek rationality and Greek's logic. The entire book is very small, in just around 80, where the book has 25 chapters. So let me understand the outline of this book. So we can divide this book into four categories, or you can say four plots, where first plot is between the chapter 1 and 9, second plot is between the chapter 10 and 15, third plot is between the chapter 16 and 23, and the fourth and last plot is between the chapter 24 and 25. In the first plot, from the chapter 1 and 9, Nietzsche tells us about the birth of tragedy out of the spirit of music, where Apollonian worldview met with Dionysian elements. Okay. Plot second, in chapter 10 to 15, tells about the story of about the suicide of the tragedy by the hands of Socrates through Euripides. In plot 3, in chapter 16 to 23, tells about the use of Greek culture, which was about, like, Greek tragedy in modern world, and the possibility of the birth of Greek tragedy through Wagner's music. In plot 4, in chapter 24 to 25, tells about the secret of the Greek tragedy and its power of art to save humanity from the horror of existence. Now let us discuss about the main characters involved in this book. So this book consists of total 10 characters, which includes uh, three or four Greek tragedians, Arthur Schopenhauer, Richard Wagner's actors and the spectators, which were involved during the Greek tragedy. And the most important two gods, Apollo and the Dionysius. Now let us discuss about the main points of Greek tragedy. Nietzsche argues that the Greek tragedy was the highest form of art because it is a mixture of Dionysian and Apollonian elements in a whole. Apollo is the god of appearance, and Nietzsche related him with dreaming, beautiful illusions of the dream world. Apollo is the creative power of plastic art in man, and he calls Apollo the shaper. Whereas Dionysus is the god of wine, intoxication, ecstasy, means standing outside of your individuality. The Dionysus is very powerful and the destroyer of things. So you have to understand the basic difference here, where Apollo is a kind of shaper and he represents the appearance in the world, where Dionysius is a god of chaos and he used to destroy things. Nietzsche claims that life itself revolves around these two artistic elements, where one element, such as Apollonian or Dionysius, wants to take over the existence of humanity. However, both gods or artistic elements are the counterpart of each other, where one cannot exist without the presence of another. However, in any extreme case, one god or one artistic element is present, the art will lose its value. Dionysian elements was found in the music of the chorus, whereas Apollonian element was found in dialogue, which gave a concrete symbolism that balanced the art. Nietzsche argued that it is the immersion required by Dionysian essence called primordial unity, which allows one to become unified with art and escape the human suffering. Nietzsche believed that before the Greek tragedy, Greeks were suffering from nihilism and the horror of existence. Therefore, Nietzsche concluded that the Greek music has given birth to the Greek tragedy. In other words, the Greek theatre is a place where the relationship between wild Dionysius and bright Apollo takes place. Here we have to understand that these both gods are just artistic energies present in our bodies. Dionysus enters in the field or in our life or in our difficult situations when reason fails. There is no way other around. In the end, it isn't until Euripides brings audience onto the drama depicting the mundane events of daily life that Greek tragedy lost its lust for art, because Socrates infected Athens with his theoretical and rational and analytical spirit that killed the Dionysus element. So here comes the another part, and that is what I have learned from this book and what I have liked about this book. So first of all, uh, the best way to communicate art is through images and expression and without the use of language. But nowadays you can see that most of people are using languages to express their art because they find that language is very powerful. But in reality, there are different ways to express your thoughts and feelings, and they are very much powerful than our languages because languages has limitations. Nietzsche expresses his thought that the Dionysian spirit of tragedy is eternal and its rebirth can be anticipated in different forms. Nietzsche's account for the demise of Greek tragedy depicts the rational and theorist Greek philosopher Socrates as a villain who is to be blamed for the disappearance of Dionysian forces and elements from Greek tragedy. Nietzsche has a hope in the power of Greek tragedy and Dionysian elements which can save the humanity from mental problems, nihilism, and science. And this book is a really very serious work, and he has given it his all, and it reflects how serious he was about this work. So now comes the another part, which is what I disliked about this book. So these are just my personal opinions. This book represents to me an amateur work of Friedrich Nietzsche, and what he was in not in reality means he represented his work in this book but I think that he haven't expressed himself fully. He haven't expressed his thought fully in this book. In other words, I can see a pressure on Friedrich Nietzsche. Like he was forcing his words and he was forcing his viewpoints in this book very seriously without very solid, you can say, foundations. I have observed or I have felt a very strong pressure on Friedrich Nietzsche for praising his masters such as Schopenhauer and Richard Wagner, which I found that it was not necessary, and I really hated his writing style. I like this book, and I like most of his book, but this book is very academic. It is not like other book, like which he has written in past, like after the birth of tragedy. This book is very theoretical, and you can relate it with a kind of research paper. I felt that his main context and his central idea was very good and he represented it very well. But I felt a kind of pressure so that he overstretched so many things and linked things forcefully. It's like a college student who wants to complete his assignment on the last day or something, or you can say that he a student who just want to complete the assignment. There was no a kind of very clear moment in that book where he has represented so many things because I was very much confused although he has cleared most of the things in this book, but it was not that much clear which was required from that book. However, he has maintained his dignity and he has represented his points very well. So the biggest negative point about this book is that I haven't felt the real Nietzsche in this book. This book was a kind of one person is a fan of Greek tragedy, one person is a fan of Orson Schopenhauer, one person is a fan of Greek music, one person is a fan of Apollo, one person is a fan of Dionysian, one person is a fan of Richard Wagner. I don't know why he was praising them so much. So for this reason, I can say that I have seen his vulnerable side in this book. You can say that it was his first book, but I was not that much impressed. And he was very weak in this book. For me, a man who is very much inspired by Nietzsche's work felt very bored in the middle section of this book, where he was talking about so many Greek tragedians, and I felt that boring. He made so many claims just to prove his points, but I was not convinced by his justification. His points may be very valid, but his justification for that points did not convince me very well. Those justification did not hold strong in many sense. I would have enjoyed this book more if this book would be of around 40 to 50 pages, not more than that, because he stressed things very deeply in this book. I'm very sure that if matured Nietzsche have written this book, it would be very short. I can surely say that this book is not up to the level of Friedrich Nietzsche's writing. However, it is the truth that Nietzsche himself has written this book. You can compare this book with other books of Nietzsche where Nietzsche's one single paragraph of any other book is more deep and intense than this whole book. So now comes to the conclusion part, and my conclusion is that when I was reading, I found that Nietzsche was very much passionate about absorbing himself in the world of beauty, in the world of music, in the world of Greek tragedy. It was very beautiful to read him and to know that how much he loves music and how much he loves Dionysian elements. His sentiments about this book are really moving. It can inspire you to the next level. Overall, he wrote a very nice book. I was just disappointed by the level of the work by him in this. So this book has no Nietzsche's grand style for which he is usually very famous. In this book, he is not very critical about negative aspects of Greek tragedy or negative aspect. He was not that much critical as compared to his other work. However, this book really inspired me to take very serious decision in life. The main points I hated about this book was like he was very much influenced. Like he was not very much real in this book. He was influenced. Like he was influenced by Greek gods. He was very much influenced by the Greek tragedy and Schopenhauer, Richard Wagner. Means he was very much praising all the things over the top, which was not digestible for me. That is what I hated. And the main point is that this book is not for everyone. If you want to read Nietzsche's work, you can read other books of Nietzsche's, because the ideas which he has represented in this book, you can easily find in other books, or you can just read the summary of this book, or you can read some famous quotes by Nietzsche in this book. That is more than sufficient for you. But if you are a very serious Nietzsche reader, or if you want to know how Nietzsche was influenced and what inspired Nietzsche to write such great books in the later his life, then you should definitely read this book. It is a very small book and you would enjoy it. Suppose if this is a 4 hours book, then you are definitely going to enjoy for 2 and up to 3 hours, and 1 hour will be very boring for you. And if you are just a beginner on Nietzsche and you want to read him, then you should avoid it. You should read his other works, because this book will not give you that much respect for Nietzsche, but he is usually known for. I am amazed by the courage of Friedrich Nietzsche for his dedication and seriousness about Greek music, Dionysian elements, and Greek gods. So I'll give 6 out of 10 to the starting of this book, because this book has really an amazing starting, and 2 out of 10 to the middle section of this book, because I found that I was not able to connect myself that part. Maybe I haven't read much about the Greek history. That is why I was not able to connect. And maybe he has added so many details in the middle section of this book, which I felt really boring. And the third and the last part was really inspiring. I'll give 4 out of 10 to this book. And these, I'll give this book 2 out of 10 from the perspective of active Nietzsche reader, and 5 out of 10 from a non-Nietzsche reader. So here I am adding the final words of matured Nietzsche, which he later in his life discussed about this book. Nietzsche criticized his own writing in the original text, referring to it as an impossible book, badly written, ponderous, embarrassing, image mad, and image confused, sentimental, saccharine, to the point of effeminacy, uneven in tempo, and without the will to logical cleanliness. Thank you for watching my video. I'll see you in the next one.